Over the past few months, I have been having a writing experience that is completely different than anything I've ever done before, and I've got to say, I might be a little bit addicted. Hello Word Nerds! Happy Tuesday and welcome back from hiatus. I hope you're all having an absolutely fantastic summer so far. Mine has definitely been one for the books in a way that I never would have expected at the beginning of 2019 when I was kind of mapping out what I thought I'd be working on. I never thought I'd be here, but I really can't complain because I have been slowly dipping my toes into the world of game writing and I am just absolutely loving it. For any of you who don't know, I've been working with a website called WordNerds since I think October of last year. They are a website that basically aims to gamify writing, turning your writing routine into more of an adventure and an RPG where you're doing things like battling monsters and completing quests and leveling up your avatar all while you're exploring this really creative and vibrant world. So I started out in doing their social media, creating content for Twitter and Instagram, and from there I started doing kind of more marketing initiatives and outreach, which was really cool as well, and then added in video editing, which was really awesome. It's not something I'd really played around with that much despite 6 years or so of the Word Nerds, so I've learned so much there and all of these cool new skills I want to incorporate into other areas of my life. And then in the last little while I've actually gotten to get a little bit more involved with the game writing and planning and figuring out events, and that has been a really interesting experience coming from a novel writing background and seeing how differently things are done and all of the ways that I love it and all of the ways that I just didn't expect for things to go. So I wanted to dig a little bit into all of that today because for any of us who love games, seeing kind of what behind the scenes isn't something we always get to do, and I've always found it super fascinating. So in case any of you do as well, or are just curious on how something like this comes to be, then hopefully this will be interesting for you as well. So for any of you who haven't used For the Words before, essentially they have kind of a base game that happens all the time. You're progressing through different regions in the game, all while writing your own story or essays or homework or really whatever it is you're working on or writing, battling monsters and beating quests and just progressing through the game. And then throughout the year they have all of these special events. Sometimes they coincide with NaNoWriMo, with November or April or July, and sometimes they're just kind of around smaller holidays or special things in game, and these usually come with extra quests or events or monsters to kind of mix things up and get people excited to write and do all of that fun stuff. So this year during April and July, the theme was expeditions, where the characters were going to be going back into previously established areas of the game and exploring deeper into them, and new monsters and new quests and new storylines and all of that fun stuff. So in April they did their forest expedition, in July there was a desert expedition, and I think it's fair to say I kind of gradually leveled up throughout the year so far in their special events. I did get to see a little more of behind the scenes during April when they were ramping up and figuring out what the expedition was going to be and what the storyline was going to look like and what the quests were going to look like, getting to read some of that ahead of time. And then in July I got to have more of a hand in figuring out all of the things, and not the writing in terms of the actual content that you're reading, but what that bigger picture is going to look like, what we're doing, all of that. I do think I did a little bit of actual quest writing, but I think a lot of the text got changed once the main writer got to go through and turn things into more of the For the Words tone of storytelling. And then in the last week or so, there has been another update, which basically went back to these expedition areas and found ways to change things around or add things so that they made sense in the grand scheme of the game rather than just as special events. So going back and adding them to the main For the Words experience, and I had a much bigger hand in getting to help with that kind of from beginning to end, getting to see that entire experience, writing a lot of quests, which again got changed, but figuring out what the content was going to be, what the quests were going to look like, what it was the characters were working towards, and it was just a really interesting experience because for so much of my writing career, maybe even all of it, I've been working by myself. It's just been me and my stories, and I figure out what I want to do, I write it, that's that. Whereas now I get to work with two other people who are super invested in this world, who have more experience with it than I do, and figuring out how it is they do things and adding in my own 2 cents and helping to brainstorm all of the gamification aspects at the same time and figuring out how these stories are going to get people writing. And there are definitely things you can see while you're looking at how a game is written, that you can see the parallels to novel writing where you're coming up with the bigger picture and what that story progression is going to be and what the arc is, while taking out things like the main character's progression, because the main character is the player, so they get to decide what they think and what they want to do and the order they're going to do things. That is completely out of your hands. Where you're also trying to figure out What about your storyline is going to keep people engaged with the core reason for the words, which is writing your story, because you never want to get too convoluted or too involved in things that are going to take people away from telling their own stories. Your story is always going to be secondary to the story they're writing, and I love that. And I think working on all of this with the For the Words team has really driven home something I've been thinking about lately otherwise, and that is that writing collaboratively can be so much more fun than doing it by yourself. I know novel writing is always going to be mostly a solo experience, which is another reason I love For the Words, because there adds more of a community element to it. But getting to brainstorm and come up with ideas that none of you ever would have figured out on your own, combining your thoughts into one super thought, is a really creative and engaging experience that just makes me want to do this all the time, because it's never something you have to worry about completely by yourself. If there's a plot hole you can't fix, there's teammates to help you get there. If there's things that aren't making sense, someone's going to point it out, and it's a really smooth and interesting process, and I wish there was ways to do more of that in book writing. I'm sure in things like television writing or movie writing or even comic books, you get a little more of that give and take and figuring out with a team where it is your story's going or what might not be working. So getting to do this on the game side of things was definitely an eye-opener for me and really very interesting. It's something I want to explore more of in the future, absolutely. And there are definitely bits that are more challenging than writing a novel as well, because you are working with other people. Sometimes people are going to disagree, and sometimes your preference isn't going to be the one that's chosen. But learning how to deal with that and working through what's going to be the best experience for the user is really humbling and eye-opening and a great learning experience. So really no complaints at any point, because it is such a different experience than what I'm used to, and I love getting to engage with stories in a new way. The other big takeaway for me is something that's only really been happening in the last couple of days, and that was actually launching the update so that players could see everything we've been working on and getting to watch the forums and see what it is people are enjoying. In some cases, maybe it's going to be what people haven't been liking, but that's a learning experience as well, and you get to put that into what you're doing in the future. But so far the response has been really great, and it's so addictive. I know authors have reviews where they get to see when readers love their books, but this is definitely different because they're getting it bit by bit and getting to actually play through this stuff that you've helped create. So it's a very different experience than just reading a review of your book. At the end, once it's all said and done, then there's nothing you can really change. And for me, ultimately, especially because I wasn't doing a huge chunk of the writing, I was more involved with what the bigger picture was going to be, seeing what the playing experience is like for people, and having them respond to my ideas more so than the actual quests or the writing that I was involved in has been awesome, because I love productivity tools and finding ways to get people excited to get stuff done. So seeing how people are writing more because they want to play through more of this content has been just a really unreal experience. It's hard to explain, but I'm sure a lot of you can understand getting that immediate feedback to what you've been working on and seeing how you can adapt things and do things better in the future, just because people are talking about what it was you've done and how they're using it, more so than just reading a book and experiencing a story in their own way that you don't really get to shape once the story is out there. How a reader experiences it is entirely up to them. It is their baby from then on out. Whereas a game is always going to be a bit more of a collaborative experience, especially because with For the Words, there's always going to be a next thing, a next chance to keep players involved and excited and engaged in the storyline and the tools. In my writing career so far, I think I've published at least 15 books, and some of them have done pretty well and have gotten good reviews and all of that, but this has been a completely different experience for me, and it was something I wanted to share with all of you because it's not something that most of us think we'll ever get a chance to play around with. Writing for games is a whole other thing because it's not really something you get a chance to just do by yourself. You don't get to just jump in and start your game. It's usually something you're doing with a team. So if any of you have been curious about what that might look like, or what is exciting about it, or why it's something that could be a good fit for you or not, hopefully this was at least a little bit informative. If it's something you want to dig a little bit more into, there are lots of resources online. I know I don't know much at all at this point. I've really only worked with For the Words. I am going to be doing a little more game writing in the future with another game, but hopefully I'll be talking to you about that in a future video. At this point, I definitely don't know what I'm doing, and I'm learning a ton from those who are more experienced than I am, who know For the Words and its users and what people are looking for and what people generally respond well to, or I'm just trying to add in my 2 cents where I can, help where I can, and learn what I can, because I hope to do more of this in the future. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to join us on Sunday for our next live chat, which is going to be our monthly book club. So hopefully I will see you there. And in the meantime, happy reading, happy writing, and I'll see you next time.